Wait, but you click the source. That is Marilyn. She is my sister-in-law. She is also the miracle worker behind the scenes. She's the editor.
Hello, Marilyn.
Yeah. Dale said hello. Hi. She's late. She says hi, but she has to get back to work. She's in the movie industry, and she's got to pay some movie stars. So,
oh wow,
she literally ran out of here. We held her over. we'll probably hear about this shit later, I'm sure.
Yeah. Lamont, really nice to meet you. I've heard a lot about you, obviously.
Likewise.
Introduce yourself properly.
Yep.
Hello.
Spot a cup of tea, governor.
Yeah.
Hey, very good. Sport a cup of tea, Mark Governor.
Yeah, there you go.
Is that shit common? Is that for real? When people come out there, they just see here in the States, they think everything
they see in the movies is real.
Yeah, it's like governor, London, governor, tea. It's not like that. But I only know that because you and I are friends.
London and the sort of southeast, that's about it. You know, we're so diverse here with accents. You've got, you're Scottish, you're Welsh. Someone from Scotland with a real thick Glaswegian accent probably couldn't be understood by someone from London.
Right, yeah.
Really varied.
Yeah,
really
the language, the dialect is different wherever you go.
So one of my favorite YouTubers that I watch, his name is Paul, and he has a show called Running Man Z. And he likes to point out who's from he said you could tell the dialects around the country. And he knows if a person is Welsh or Scottish or from Wessex or, and he's like, they all have their slang or their demeanor. And he said some people stick to old culture and some stick to a new retro type lifestyle.
Okay. Yeah. One thing with surprising me, we're a very mobile society now, and we're a very small country,
Right.
And the accents aren't mixing. I thought they would. I thought accents would start to be dying out already. Right. And I work with students, that are coming in at the age of 16 years old, and their accents are still really strong, from where they're from. And I thought with everybody moving about, things would start to get diluted down, but they're not. The accents are, still holding strong.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I would imagine it does.
Okay, let me start this off. What's your last name?
Collette.
Collette.
Collette?
Collette?
Collette. Yep. Collette.
Collette. I'm going to fuck this up, Dale.
No, it's not. Just Dale Collette.
Dale Collette.
Dale, if you want.
You guys want to go in on consciousness? We got UFOs. We got near death. We got. Let's just pick one because we can always have a part 2 podcast.
Yeah.
Should we go in with UFOs? Because believe it or not, this week is UFO week on a certain TV channel in the UK. And me and my father are so into that.
Let's go into it.
Current stuff.
I love that.
I like that.
Because we haven't had one of those episodes yet.
Right.
Okay. And to be honest, you talk about the consciousness, near death, UFOs. I've got notes written down here and I talk about, but it's all linked.
Yep.
It is all one thing in some way or another. These extraterrestrials.
Right.
That are visiting our planet, they know this stuff that we're only beginning to find out.
Yeah.
Okay. The shirt, and I'm like, well, shit, you might be into Zeus and the Yule and.
This is Lord of the Rings, so the Tree of Rohan.
Yeah, the Tree of Rohan.
Yeah.
The wife bought me that. I don't buy my own clothes anymore. Been married 8 years, so
hands down, Rohan was probably Rohinium is probably the baddest fucking mythological clan ever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Riders of Rohinium.
Can I say my claim to fame? I've been to Edoras in New Zealand. Found it by accident 20 years ago. I was backpacking around New Zealand and hired an old car, and I just decided to drive up a valley. And I was driving up this gravel road, and I came to a lip. Came over the lip, and there was Edoras from Lord of the Rings right in front of me. And it's one of the most monumental moments of my life, seeing that. And do you know what? Within 10 minutes, I'd forgot that it was a movie set because that place is just so
beautiful.
Stunning.
Wow. Yeah, that's on my bucket list.
It is.
Okay, let me start this off. You guys ready?
Yep.
Welcome back to the podcast. Today we have Dale Collette.
Collette.
Yeah.
Collette. You said it right.
Almost like you call it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not as posh as Collette.
Yeah. and Dale's he's with us from all the way from the UK. I don't think he's in Cornwall at the moment. Where are you at, Dale?
Warwickshire.
Warwickshire.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. I mean, this is awesome. We are connecting across the pond, as they say.
yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that what you guys call it, Dale? Across the pond? I don't think that we say that here. We don't say across the pond. We just say across the ocean.
Do you know what? I think it came. I watched a documentary the other day about Frank Whittle, who did his work not far from here in a place called Lutterworth, and he was the guy that invented the jet engine. And that's when they started calling it across the pond, because it's kind of shrunk it from an ocean to a pond, because you could cross it in 8 hours, although that's still a pretty big pond in my mind. But
Right.
yeah, I think that's potentially where the term came from. That's what this documentary said anyway.
Well, that makes sense right there. I like
sense.
that. Well, go ahead and tell the people who you are. Where's the Dale train headed?
The Dale train is headed wherever life takes me.
Okay.
I've always kind of been to just the sort to go with the flow of life, surf the wave. I had plans when I was younger. They never materialized, so I just kick back and let life take me wherever it takes me, and that's it. So right now I sort of work in the agriculture industry, but I've got a real strong interest in the sort of stuff that you guys are recording really good podcasts about, and I think about it all the time. Think about it too much sometimes, drive myself a bit crazy. So yeah, but everything from near-death studies, the afterlife, UFOs, anything that's sort of tangible, and you can that I think we're coming into an age where this sort of stuff is going to be more proven than not.
Right.
It's coming out of the shadows and it's coming into the light. The criticism of it is dying away, and more eminent people, qualified people, are just coming forward and saying, do you know what, we have something on this. That there's more to this than just a load of tin hat wearing mumbo jumbo.
Now, Dale, I know out here in the U.S., it's been hitting our media front pretty hard, thick and heavy. It's like you can't go 1 or 2 months without it being in the news here, whether it be through the military disclosure or whether it be some outside funded group that's trying to gain disclosure. What's it look like on the news as far as like in the UK? Are they pushing it heavy, saying, hey, the US is looking into it? I think the Ministry of Defense is going to start looking into things like this.
On the mainstream television news, there's not that much.
Right.
There never has been.
Right.
There will be the story about Farmer Joe Bloggs down the road who saw something in the sky when he'd had 15 pints of cider, and that's about as much as you get. But if you go online, it's everywhere. It's all over YouTube and everything. And there are many groups here. This CE5 protocol, I don't know if you've heard about that. That's one thing that's gaining a lot of ground here. So yeah, it is in the mainstream here, but you have to kind of go and look for it. But you can't avoid it because everybody's online these days. Even my father, who's in his mid-70s, he's online and he's constantly looking up this stuff. So yeah, it is gaining a lot of ground.
Now CE5, that's with
Stephen Greer.
Stephen Greer?
Yeah, Stephen Greer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Now, we used to live in the high desert in California, and we were about 30 minutes away from Joshua Tree. And I know he spends a lot of time in Joshua Tree. Oddly enough, we used to ride dirt bikes in that area. So it's a really desolate desert. Yeah. It's a very beautiful desert. And I think the first time we had a true UFO experience was in the high desert.
Yeah.
And we had just gotten off from work and we were down the hill. Well, they say down the hill, if you're in the high desert, you're about close to 3,000 feet elevation. Mm-hmm. Most people commute down the mountain to the closest city to work so they can have a little bit of peace when they go home. And we got off work one day. It takes us about an hour and a half to get home. And we're in separate vehicles. And I'm traveling with my significant other at the time.
Right.
And he's traveling with his wife at the time. Our exits were no more than a mile apart, but I would still be about 7 miles or 8 miles away from the freeway going west. And he's probably about at the time, 3 or 4 miles off the freeway going east.
Yeah.
And so as I'm headed home, I see them, getting ready to take their exit. I have long since took my exit. And then I get a phone call from him. And him and his wife seen something massive in the sky. And I still don't know how you had the know-it-all to call me as you're witnessing this.
Yeah.
So they see it. I don't really know your story, but when he called me, we were in a Subaru and it had a nice, huge sunroof. And so we're like right in the desert. It's totally dark. There's no, street lights at all. So there's really no light pollution. And as soon as he tells me this and we hang up the phone, we stop, we look out the sun, or we look up out at, out of the sunroof and didn't see anything. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get out of the car and look. We both got out, and I shit you not, within like a moment, I mean, this whole event must have taken about maybe 20 or 30 seconds of physically visualizing this. I mean, it was huge. It was like maybe the size of a football stadium.
Wow.
And just imagine the football stadium turned upside down, and you could see all of the lights inside. It was almost like it's just hard to explain, but it was almost like black liquid water, but you could see the entire housing around it. And then there's four huge soft lights. They're not super bright. And then in my mind, I'm like, how does no one not see this?
Right.
I mean, this is just like, it's right here. And it's moving slowly. It's large, Dale, and it's not making any noise at all. And it's just moving slowly. It lasted about maybe 20 or 30 seconds, no noise, and then poof. But it wasn't like it just disappeared. It kind of like it was still there, but it just morphed into the right darkness to where no light could emit from it or no light can shine on it. And
So it almost went into like they call that stealth mode in the circles. It sort of disappeared, almost like calling it the Star Trek Klingon cloaking device.
Yeah, cloaking device. Yeah,
right. But there's this feeling that it's still there. Like, you have this feeling within you. You're like, oh no, it's not gone. It's just you can't see it anymore.
Yeah.
And the person who I was with, who I was married to at the time, it freaked her out. She was like, well, what did we just see? And the first thing we did was try to go online and figure out, okay, people in Phelan had to have seen this. This was way too large for anyone not to have seen this. And it went on for days and nothing.
And I saw it, but I think from our vantage point, it was just a light.
Yeah, so when it got to us, it was full on. I mean, it was so massive. There's no way, like, I couldn't understand why the ground wasn't shaking,
right?
Why animals and dogs weren't barking, why we didn't see jets fly overhead, because we're only an hour away from Edwards Air Force Base. Like how did they not pick this up? And
well,
that was
I think they did, but why would they ever tell the public? I mean, and again, when we saw it, it was like a star, but maybe like 10 times as bright. And it caught my attention. We didn't get that close to it like how you did, but it stood out enough for us to witness it. And I'm sure the cars coming up the hill, you have no choice but to see that in the sky. It's like,
how far away were you chaps from each other at this point?
Maybe 10 miles.
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe 10 miles apart, and it was still that big.
It's really interesting. You should say that, how like no one else saw it, and you only saw it as a star from 10 miles away. And you say, it's a football stadium, so it's huge. I was listening to an interview on another podcast, Lex Friedman podcast, with a chap called Professor Gary Dolan, and he's doing a lot of research into like metallurgy and stuff like that. He's a professor of immunology, but he's been involved in this sort of disclosure circle for a long time.
Right.
And he was talking about a case in Zimbabwe where mother, father, and the two children were driving along in the car. They also had a sunroof. They're on like a busy road. There's loads of other vehicles around them. And one of the kids in the back seat goes, "What's that?" And they look up, and there is just this huge ship above the car, just hovering above the car, just about 50 feet or something from memory. And The daughter got out her camera on her phone, took a picture of it, and they were just amazed, and then just vanished. And they looked around, and nobody else saw this. Everybody around them were just driving along as if nothing were happening. And they were like, how can everybody else have missed that? The cars behind, the cars up front, people 10 cars back would have seen it out of their windscreens, just looking up above their car, but nothing. Nobody's reacting. Hey, they look at the picture on the phone, and the big ship isn't there. All there is a small star-like, star-shaped object further up in the sky. And the kind of thinking behind this is some way we're being exposed to projections of things rather than actual things. And Gary Dolan goes on to say that, this come from someone else. I can't remember the other chap's name, but it recycled through Gary Dolan in that, these beings are so advanced. Let's say what it is. Alien visitations from somewhere else,
right,
in the universe.
right.
They're so advanced that the idea that they can cross these light years of distance, which is a shocking amount of distance, and then crash here on Earth is absurd.
It is.
That was the word that was used. It is absurd.
Right.
To the point where these crashes, they are meant to happen. It's all planned. It's all part of a show to get us used to things, disclosure bit by bit by bit. Same thing with the afterlife, near-death experiences. The world isn't ready for full proof of these things. If it came on the news tonight that the afterlife existed and that there's a heaven, all of our dead relatives are there, blah, 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 it's a place of wonderful forgiveness and love, the world's population would halve overnight. I've been saying that for years.
Yep,
There's even a film about it now called The Discovery with Robert Redford.
Yeah.
So,
yep. And I saw that.
It's a very dangerous thing to have that kind of proof. So I think what's going on here with both consciousness and the afterlife and extraterrestrials, I think it's all part and parcel of this same sort of disclosure thing to us on this quite dark, primitive planet, that we are being drip fed. We're given, with the afterlife stuff, I believe we're given enough to give us hope, but not enough to give us proof on a civilization level.
Right.
People have proof on an individual level. And I think part of that is their work is to spread the word of this, to spread the message of this. So I also kind of believe, it's kind of going off topic of the UFOs here, onto NDE'S, but I think that people have NDE'S because they say, some people have them, some don't, and they can't work out why. Well, I think it's deliberate. Again, I think if you accept for a moment that this reality is emergent and that there is a fundamental reality underneath this, like the foundations, and we've emerged from that, then you have to accept that fundamental reality is under intelligent control. And therefore, I don't think anything like that happens by accident.
But Dale, you said this is dangerous. So why would this reality be dangerous? Dangerous for who? Even if we did find out, which I'm sure we believe now, that there's something visiting, and the people caught wind of it, why do you think it's dangerous? Do you really think that the higher upper echelon wants to keep control of its slaves? And if the slaves found out, hey, we don't have to be here, we don't have to keep going with this life, there's something after this? Or, in your mind, why is it so dangerous?
Kind of a bit of a can of worms, that opening that one. The way I think of things is this reality is a place of education. And there are civilizations within this reality that have been here a lot longer than us. Obviously, this is speculation.
Right.
We have observations of this stuff. There's no solid proof, although the disclosure stuff by the Pentagon and the Tic Tac video and the gimbal video and all that sort of stuff, that's pretty hard to argue with, along with all the near-death experience studies and so on and so forth. There's a lot of stuff that's hard to argue with, but in skeptics' minds, they still haven't got the smoking gun of proof. You ask, why would that be dangerous? Because this realm could well be a school. And I think it would be the same as sitting down in an exam in high school and just being given all the answers. What good are you to society, to the greater society, when you leave school if you were given all the answers to the exam? You've not learnt to work for things. You've not learnt to discover. You've not learnt how to, in this world, love, which is obviously the thing that permeates through all these NDEs, is we have to learn to love and to understand each other and to experience. And if we were shown the true reality of things, many people, I think, would check out. They
Right.
really would, you know.
Right.
I once sat there and I do little thought experiments. And I thought, you know, why aren't I given irrefutable proof? Why doesn't, you know, dead relative just appear in front of me and go, hey, Dale, you know, we know you, you know, you're ready to hear this.
Yeah.
Blah. This is the truth. Why haven't I been given that? Because I wouldn't top myself, you know, I wouldn't do anything like the coin phrase from that film, The Discovery, to get there. I wouldn't do that. I'd carry on living this life. And then I did a little thought experiment. I thought, whoa, just wait a minute. Just say, let's say, you know, a billionaire rocked up at my door and said, hey, I own this island in the Caribbean. You can have it. The only condition is you've got to give up your life here. You know, you, your wife, your family, you can all move there, live there for the rest of your lives. I'll give you, you know, $100 million as well. Would I turn that down? Hell no.
Yeah.
I'd be there in a flash.
Right.
So I'm claiming that I wouldn't turn that down, but I would turn down
The
the
afterlife.
idea of heaven.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm thinking, you know what? I'm not as golden as I think I am. I'm
No.
not as, you know, I'm not as
No,
as
and I
solid
would
in that way.
literally have to say, it'd be hard pressed for me to stay here.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, and you don't have to be of a depressed mind or a depressed nature, or things are just not working out well for you in life. I think anybody, even the person that's got it all, is still not fulfilled. But if you give him an opportunity or the option to say that, I think everyone would entertain the notion of just, well, I think it's time for me to separate from this reality. Because it is hard. It's like it's just a moving, at times, stress ball.
So that brings the question would be, which would be the one thing? Okay, so either we get full disclosure that there's something visiting here, or we get full disclosure that there's life after death. Which one do you disclose if you had to?
I think, again, people need to get used to stuff.
Yeah.
Gently, bit by bit. So the easiest thing for us to accept is the fact that things are visiting here. In fact, this is one of my sort of queries about this, is that there's something coming down the railroad towards society that we're not aware of, which is why we're getting this disclosure. So again, another thought experiment. If you were, you know, government in charge of, you know, world superpowers, and you were aware that there were other civilizations out there, you had technology, you were in communication with them, not for a moment would you ever think, the world needs to know this. You'd be like, the world can't handle this.
Right.
But that's not what's happening. What's happening seems to be the drip feed of disclosure, bit by bit. I remember reading a book by Timothy Good back in the late 80s called Above Top Secret. And in that book, he received information from informants inside the government that, you know, the government were fully aware, the US government, this is fully aware of what's going on with extraterrestrials, so on and so forth. They had recovered technology, were in communication with these off-world beings, and that the plan was to drip feed this information to society through the media, through TV shows, through films, to get the world used to the idea that we're not alone in this universe.
Right.
Why?
Right.
Why would they? I think there's something going to happen. I don't necessarily think it's something bad, but I think there's something heading towards us that the world governments have had no choice but to prepare us for. I think it's out of their hands. I think they're potentially being told to get us ready for disclosure. I don't think there's anything sinister like a high world order keeping us enslaved or anything like that, because if that was the case, they wouldn't do any disclosure about this stuff.
Right.
You know, they would keep it quiet.
I would have question about how they're doing it, because let's just say they are forced at the hand to disclose at a slow pace, because whatever's coming, like that train you're saying, whatever's coming, it's coming. But why would they drip feed the masses things like movies like Independence Day or Aliens, where the aliens are these big monsters, they're going to come and eat you, but yet the U.S. is going to be that savior that's going to help you and save you and protect you from those.
Why gear our psyche for horror?
Why build a narrative of that when they can also build the opposite narrative? And to my other point before that, Dale, was we're saying all this now, but if you look back at paintings you know, they have them all over the History Channel.
Yeah.
Pictures of Jesus, and there's a UFO shining a light.
Yeah.
All these, you know, fables told back in the day of, you know, chariots of the gods and what they saw in the skies, and they only used their language and their vernacular at the times of that they were living in. They couldn't say, "Oh, we saw rockets or airplanes. We saw chariots on fire. We saw this and this and that." I'm one to believe that we've gone through it before. We were aware of it because we were putting it in our pictures and our paintings. It's on the walls. But at some point, the visitation stopped, and now they're getting ready to recycle again.
Totally. I think it's because we've become a world civilization. When we were small pockets of civilization, I think they can handle that. But on a world level, with the intercommunication we have, you just have to look at H.G. Wells' radio broadcast of War of the Worlds. You know, people went crazy because they heard the mock news report that aliens has landed, and they were going out shooting at stuff in the sky and all sorts, you know. But to answer your earlier point about, you know, why is the media portraying extraterrestrials as a hostile entity that needs to be battled with and warred with? I heard an interview online with a couple of guys, the two producers of Dark Skies, which was around in the 90s. And they were approached by a government official who said to them, you know, what you are producing here is accurate, contains some truths. But the upshot was they didn't like the fact that it was being portrayed as a horror. And they were saying that is not what it's like. But the problem is horror sells, horror makes money. So I think the government can put in suggestions, but at the end of the day, producers still need to make movies that are going to make money, and horror sells. Horror draws people to the box office. You know? The only one that wasn't particularly like that was Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Right, Stephen.
Only at the end. Only at the end. It still had that horror element running all the way through it, and at the end you find, oh, well, you know, they're all good and benevolent. Whether stealing a 3-year-old out of a cat flap is benevolent, I don't know. But, not a very nice thing to do. But so I think that's what we're dealing with here. You know, you're dealing with the human condition of, you know, having to make money because we are primitive people. And going on to that thing about, you know, chariots of the gods, you know, with seeing the fires in the sky, chariots. I think they have to communicate to us in whatever way we can understand at that time. Back then, they may have appeared as chariots, flaming chariots through the skies. Now we're a technological civilization. So we are being shown technology in the skies, things that can outperform what we can already do. But again, I have a high suspicion that that is just a game, and that the real reality, we're not seeing it all. We're just seeing a projection.
Well, and the real reality is the government knows more than what we know. While we sit here and come up with conspiracy theories, or if we come up with these hypotheses of what we think could be out there, they know what's out there. And as we're having this conversation, and I often tell myself, but am I really ready for an alien to present itself physically in my presence? How would I respond? It's one thing talking about it, but it's a different thing when that entity actually manifests itself and it looks nothing humanoid nature. So talk about your paradigm being just exploded, and that the actual, I would be remiss if I didn't say I would have some underlying fear.
No, completely. Yeah, I'd love to, but at the same time, I know full well I'd need new underwear straight after.
Yeah,
it'd be terrifying. But this is the thing: we think the governments know everything, but I always go back to that book I read, Timothy Good, Above Top Secret, and the one chilling paragraph that really stayed with me. And I don't know whether this is true or not. Again, it's speculation. It's leaked information. You don't know what's disinformation. But the one thing that was, really chilling from that book is the excerpt where the American government chatting with these extraterrestrial biological entities, or EBs as they call them, aliens, and they were asking, what is the truth? What is the nature of the universe? What created the universe? How do you do the things you do? We want to know everything. And these aliens said, you can't handle it. You will not be able to handle it. And the American government pushed. So these aliens said, okay, get 7 of your best minds, most intelligent, most grounded people you can. Bring them to us and we'll disclose it to them as much as we think they can handle. So they did. Within 24 hours, 6 of them had committed suicide and the other one went completely mad. I may be a little off with the numbers and the facts there, but that is the gist of it. That these people, strong-minded people, scientific people, could not handle the truth. And I think that's why I kind of link all this together with the consciousness, the afterlife, the extraterrestrials. We already hear stories of them using telepathy to communicate and things like that. Obviously, there's no hard evidence of that, like you get with the released footage from the Pentagon. But there's a lot of talk of it, a lot of commonality between people who have these close encounters of the third and the fourth kind, where they actually meet these entities, that things happen on a telepathy level. And I think these extraterrestrials, when they start to make themselves known to the world, will bring so much more disclosure with them than we are ready for.
Oh, I can imagine. And I think we all play by the same, or we're governed by the same universal law. So like on Earth, and this only applies to Earth, we encapsulate ourselves with the whole religion, being atheist, the universe, I'm spiritual, this, and aliens, which we are aliens. I don't know why we always seem to find a way to disconnect between, the aliens are coming to us.
Exclude
when we are,
ourselves.
Yeah, we are in fact the same entity.
Yeah, very true.
Do you think those UFOs or aliens, the people that have been around longer, know the true essence of consciousness and where we go when we die, and they just let us keep what our little thoughts are, but they ultimately know what happens when you transition? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if we just compare their technology to ours for a second, and we use that as a sort of measure. So the fastest thing we've got right now is the Voyager spacecraft. I think, I can't remember, I should have done some research on this before coming online, because I forget these numbers. I think it's like 19 miles every second or something, but it's going at a ridiculous speed. It's twice as far away from Earth as Earth to Pluto. So it's gone beyond, it's left the bounds of the solar
interstellar.
system.
Yeah,
it's interstellar now. It's heading to the nearest star, Proxima Centauri, which is only like 3.9 light years away. At its current speed, it's going to take about 75,000 years to get there.
Right.
That's what these distances are. Yet these entities are able to jump we assume they jump the distances quickly. Who knows? They might be on some sort of massive mothership, like a planetary mothership that's taken them thousands of years to get here. But from the technology we're seeing evidence of in our atmosphere, it seems that very unlikely. It seems that they may well be able to traverse these distances in the blink of an eye.
Right.
And if that's the case with their technology, or what we're being exposed to, who knows where their consciousness and understanding of consciousness is? You know, the talk is that they're not a few hundred years ahead of us. They are thousands, if not millions of years ahead of us. So they have a grasp on the true reality of this universe. And if you think about where we are already with the understandings of the quantum realm is undoing relativity, you know? We're starting to employ that in computers. People like Sir Roger Penrose have already got theories on consciousness based around quantum information and wave particle duality and the collapse of the wave function into a particle creating consciousness. The scope that offers to the potential of all the things which we think are, you know, strange tin hat crazy stuff. You know, we're talking ESP, life after death, survival of consciousness outside the physical body, and all of that suddenly becomes a possibility when looking at Penrose's model. Roger Penrose doesn't say it himself, but the guy that works with him, Dr. Stuart Hameroff, he certainly does. He's certainly, you know, an advocate of that as well. And I think Penrose is, you know, same as most of us over here, pretty stiff upper lip British person. And they don't want to admit to it. But I've seen Sir Roger Penrose himself pushed on the matter. And he says, yeah, I think there must be something more than we are aware of here. You know,
well, I could just feel it. I mean, can't we all just feel that there's something more to us than us?
Yeah.
I feel like I've got my head in a bucket.
Right.
And when I die, my head will be pulled out of that bucket and I'll be like, oh, yeah, of course, I forgot this.
Right.
I was fortunate enough to get a brief taste of that.
Yeah.
You know, I had my head literally out of my ass, and I could tell that I was just locked in a capsule of a figment or of a physical nature, just blinded, living out this, you know, an experience on Earth. It was only until I was outside of myself till I really, really, really figured it out.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm just surprised that most scientists, they don't speak about the real physics because they don't know it. They always interpret things as of an Earth understanding. Like SETI, for instance, they're still listening to the stars as if they're using the same means of communications as we do.
Yeah, completely. Like we're on the verge of quantum communications already.
Right.
Meaning we'll have only used radio for about 100 years.
Right.
So I think it's pointless listening out there for radio signals from other worlds because, radio, it will travel, but it dissipates and weakens over distance. And a civilization may only use it as we're experiencing for 100 years and then stop. So we're listening to the wrong channel. We're listening to the wrong medium.
Right.
Well, I mean, however, though, there are some fascinating things that are going on in outer space that I'm really interested in, and that's the FRBs. And these FRBs just pop up out of nowhere. They're just random frequency-based things, and they're fast radio bursts. So what's causing these fast radio? I mean, there's some people saying, okay, these can be, dying stars, or these can be collisions, right? Or two galaxies colliding, and we're just picking up pieces. But what if it's bits of information?
Right.
It could be. One other possibility, again, just a theory, is that some of these extraterrestrial craft, it's been known that they use electromagnet. I say known, but surmised that they use electromagnetism as part of their systems for propulsion. And maybe there are larger craft in our solar system that use this, and when they speed off, they just send an EM wave that could be detected and perhaps thought of as some sort of stellar activity.
Right.
We're so we think we're advanced, but we are so primitive. You go back 3 generations, things were steam powered.
Right.
Go back a few generations before that, and
horsepower. Yeah.
We're primitive. We are so primitive, and we are so arrogant. And it's one thing, the arrogance of science. Science is so arrogant, thinking it knows everything. But science to date has not explained a single thing.
It hasn't.
It just describes behaviors.
Right.
And that's what people miss. Science is very, very good at describing behaviors. But for every behavior that it describes, over time, that changes and is proved incorrect, and a new behavior is described. But to explain something, you say, oh, well, the Big Bang created the universe. Well, what created the Big Bang?
Right.
What created the thing that created the Big Bang?
But
and there's, it just goes many, many layers deep. There's theories by people like Chris Langren and Donald Hoffman, that consciousness is the root of everything. And I'm really coming around to that myself.
It has to be.
Yeah.
Because if I'm an advanced civilization that's 1 million years ahead of, let's just say, our sector of the cosmos, I'm just going to say that space-time is linear, and we're at the precipice of that space-time. And what would stop us from having our own spaceships integrated with our consciousness? So I'm in a proverbial spaceship, and it moves, and I bend it at the will of my consciousness. If I want to go left, I just think left. If I want to get out of sight, I can just tap in and out of dimensions. If I want to go to a different galaxy, I can create a conscious wormhole of the figment of my imagination to put me there instantaneously. Who's to say, that type of technology isn't already out there just because I'm able to think it now?
But okay, so I think the science we're getting is the national standard science that we can handle right now. But there's also, I'm sure, paid program scientists working under a black budget whose sole priority is to figure out the things that we don't know, the things that don't behave the way that Einstein thought they did. And we've stumbled on some things. Now, there's been a lot of things down the wire saying we've got the means to take ET home. You
Yeah,
got
yeah,
Bigelow, who bought into Skinwalker Ranch, saying our cell phones are just the pennies and buttons of technology that we have. Really, like the cell phone is nothing. That's what the human mind can comprehend as far as technology and unseen wave particles. You know, like there's so many different degrees of science that are out there. I just think the ones that are paid for will never know what the results or the data they've collected over the years.
yeah, yeah. Well, going back to what Lamar was saying first about these craft being controlled by consciousness, the accounts do say that. People that have worked on them, people that have seen them, people that report, seeing crashed vehicles, so on and so forth, is that it is some sort of consciousness interface that controls them and actually gives access to being able to jump these distances, so on and so forth. And Lamont, what you were saying about black budget type stuff, the current theory is that the back engineering of extraterrestrial craft isn't being undertaken by the government anymore because it's very difficult to keep it under wraps with freedom of information requests. So what they're doing is they're outsourcing it to private companies. So private companies, all very secret, are now doing this because you can't get that information legally out of a private company.
Right. Especially if it's
a lot
patented.
easier,
Right.
yeah, to keep it covered up. So yeah, obviously this is all theory. At the end of the day, we only see what we can see, but I'm pretty confident there's got to be something going on.
Right. We don't have, I don't like the, okay, I'm not going to put us in the box about how smart we are, but it's safe to say we're not the brightest minds on the planet. But for the three of us to have this conversation and we can bring it from our imagination and manifest it with each other so we can understand what we're saying. If the three of us can do that, and you've got the brightest minds out there who are contemplating things all day long and they have an unlimited supply of currency, I find it hard to believe that we haven't figured out a lot of life's struggles. Like there should be no more poverty. There should be no more, fossil fuel industries. I know we found a way to just harness the power of just the planet, like why is this being kept from us? What is the true danger there? I mean, some can also speculate that the reason why they don't want to disclose all of this high science and, alien beings visiting Earth and life after death for one reason and one reason alone. That could be just religion. Look at how many people are tied in to religion. And there's a bunch of different religious things out there. That alone could be the main reason why we're not getting enough information.
But that's changing. A lot of people, correct me if I'm right, Dale, but isn't there someone in the Vatican that is actually enrolled to look at UFO research?
I'm not sure about that. I think I may have heard that. Now you bring it up, but I can't say for sure.
Right. I think in the religious aspect, I think more and more people are being turned on by the fact that, ETs and UFOs exist outside of their religious beliefs or what they've been taught. I think more and more people are waking up to that.
Yeah, but it goes against a lot of religion ideation.
It does. And for those hardcore fanatics that are truly entangled with their religion, if an ET presence were to present itself over every major metropolis and show themselves, what does that do to a person's religious and political beliefs?
Yeah, completely. And, it's, I think the human condition gets in the way of a lot of things, a lot of our progress, both technological, social, and moral. As you're saying, Lamont, why aren't we at this stage where, nobody is suffering? And it's politics, the human condition. It almost comes down.
The petrodollar, yeah.
Yeah, it comes down to the 7 deadly sins. I'm not a particularly religious person, but greed, You know, greed is a big thing. Ego as well. You know, every day we do battle with other people's egos, you know, people who will not accept facts, who will not want to listen. And, you know, just because they don't want their ego damaged, because what's more important to them is being right rather than knowing the truth. And I think that's held us back an awful lot. And perhaps it didn't hold these civilizations back, or maybe it did. And this is because it brings me around in a loop to what I was saying earlier on about, you know, I think we're being forced disclosure. One of my ideas, I don't really know why this is happening, but one of my ideas is that we're at a precipice in our society when we are getting very close to the point where we could destroy ourselves and everything on earth with it. You know, we already have the capability for that. It's just the upheaval of politics and the up and down of it that makes this more or less of a threat. Technologically, we are there. Politically, we keep touching it and backing off. You know, Cuban Missile Crisis, Cold War. You know, we back away from self-destruction. Now we're up there again with everything that's going on. You know, and the poor people of Ukraine and Russia and so on and so forth. And I think the extraterrestrials are pushing for the disclosure to wake society up, to wake people up before we destroy ourselves.
Okay,
but it's got to be done so carefully.
Let me stop you. Let me stop you right there, Dale, before you even finish that. Why won't they jump in? Why the shenanigans? Is what some people would say.
Yeah, I'm just about to say, because if it's too soon, we will destroy ourselves anyway, because there's too many religious people out there. There's too many people that are not prepared for it. You know, society is a very, very, very difficult thing. As the saying goes, a person is kind, is moral and considerate, but people are stupid. And that's true, you know. I've worked in public service. I was in the police for a number of years, and yeah, people en masse are a dangerous thing. They really are. And you could go up to 100 people in the street and just say to them, how would you react if, you know, ET suddenly landed? And obviously be difficult for them to, as Lamar was saying earlier, you know, how would you really react? But they'd probably say, oh yeah, I'd probably be fine with it. Say hello, invite them in for a cup of tea, governor, you know. And but in truth, en masse, people, you know, all it would take is that mass hysteria element where 2 or 3 people start going a bit crazy, getting panicked, and we'd do the same. And I think this is part of our survival instinct from when we were hunter-gatherers, from when we were, you know, wild creatures ourselves. You know, we are not far removed from that, and we still have a lot of programming in our physical bodies that influences our consciousness. Because I do believe that there are 2 forms of consciousness. There's brain-based consciousness and transcendental-based consciousness. And we are victims of our brain-based consciousness that controls our emotions and controls what we do, which is why when people have the near-death experiences, they step out of it. Even out-of-body experiences, they have so much clarity and peace because they're not blinded by this primitive meat sack that we live in. And this primitive meat sack controls a lot of how the world works and causes a lot of problems. And we do need to rise above it, but unfortunately, it needs to be done slowly. You can't rip it off quick, or else it'll just fall apart, I think.
But to your point, so when is it a good time? I mean, if you have the power to disclose, would we really wait until the red button was about to be pressed? And if so, why wait that long just to get the information out?
I think that would be a precipice moment. You've heard, no doubt, of the stories from Colonel Salas, who was in charge of a nuclear missile base, and there was, you know, he was like 150 feet underground in the control room, and suddenly the calls came from the gates that there was an object, a UFO, over the gate, and all the nuclear missiles just shut down one after the other. And a similar thing happened in Russia, but all the missiles started up there instead. So I think that is one of those messages being sent that, you know, you think you know, if you go to press the red button, we're going to stop you. And I think if it comes to that, then full disclosure will just happen, because there will be no choice. All the missiles will, hopefully, fingers crossed, be disarmed, taken out of action, and the world will stop, you know, almost like a day the earth stands still moment.
Right.
But if our politics are good enough not to get us into that mess, then I think disclosure will carry on the way it's going,
Right.
bit by bit,
Right.
drip by drip.
Right.
Obviously, there will come a point where someone will have to stand up and say, yes, this is the case. How far away that is, I don't know.
Why does the British, I never understood this. Why does the British government let Nick Pope run around the world so, what's the term? So just upfront about it all. And this man has held power for, I don't know what, 4 years. And he's dealt with sensitive information. What possesses a country to let an individual go out and just be so adamant about what's going on in his mind?
Yeah, I do wonder that myself, because he would have signed the Official Secrets Act in the role he had.
Right.
How he's not being prosecuted under that, I don't know. But then again, can they? Because if they do take action against him, that's confirming what he's saying is true.
Right.
So their hands are probably tied. They can't do anything, because that would be a full admission if they took any action against him.
So was there no MDA for him to disclose any type of information, or does that all expire once you're out of the position?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah.
Well, one possible scenario is that maybe he is part of the plan. Louis Elizondo,
Right.
part of the plan,
Right.
and all the the ex-director of the CIA. I've forgotten his name now. Mellon.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Chris Mellon. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe he's part of the plan as well. Maybe this is all an orchestrated show to get us used to,
Disclosure.
accepting it. One thing I do want to say, because people are like, oh yeah, we're going to be invaded by aliens, they're going to take over the planet. I think absolutely that's a load of rubbish, because if they were going to do that, they'd have done it before we depleted all of Earth's resources.
Right.
There's no resources.
Or we would have never even known if aliens were so mean and angry and terrible, there would be nothing to stop them from doing whatever they wanted to do.
Yeah, they wouldn't play by our rules or our politics. They didn't come light years away to go, oh, let's just start obeying Earth's rule and law. You know, if it was really going to be sinister in nature, and they could have done it, they could have set out a simple bacteria form from a different part of the galaxy and gotten rid of us all. I really think it's because life is so precious, and when you come across planets like Earth, you try your best to preserve them.
Yeah, I heard somebody liken it in a interview I watched a few weeks back, liken it to us making national parks and preserving the forest, trying to save the gorillas and so on and so forth, because like you say, it is precious. We need to hold on to that. One thing I do get back from people when I say, if aliens would have wanted our resources, they'd have done it already. And some people say back to me, well, maybe we're the resource. Maybe they're waiting to harvest us. But I think at the population density we're at already, I think also that would have happened. Because I think where the world's going, society in many Western countries is starting to decline. We are starting to erode with the problems that are going on, both on a local level and a national and an international level. So I think if they were here for us, in some sort of matrix way, maybe we're a load of batteries, or they want to harvest us for meat or whatever. I think again that would have happened. So I don't think there's any evidence of that. People always assume though that because they're technologically advanced, that they're going to be morally advanced. From our experience of how we have acted, that those two things don't necessarily go hand in hand. There's plenty of evidence of more technologically advanced peoples, stepping on the more primitive peoples like their cockroaches,
Right. And I'm not going to be naive to think that there aren't enemy or entities out there that are
hostile.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sure there are. But I mean, but looking at us, how could we ever point a finger when all we have to do is look at ourselves and go, oh, well, I guess we are those, aliens that we speak of that are going to come down and eat us. Matter of fact, we're just eating ourselves and killing ourselves. So how are we any
have
better?
you seen the Avatar? Have you seen how ugly we can be if we were to take over a planet?
Right. There's a show that you got me into, and it's on Apple TV, and it's called
For Mankind.
For All Mankind.
Yeah.
And it kind of twists the narrative about getting to the moon, the race to get to the moon. And as the show goes on, we just carry our human shit outer space. So now that they're building a base on the moon, and I don't want to do any spoilers, but they're also on the moon with Russians. And where are they fighting now? On the moon.
Right.
And it's just like, we can't leave this planet. If it were up to me, I would not let us leave this planet, because human nature, that's what we're going to do. We're going to race to Mars. We're going to try to claim some shit that isn't ours in a celestial body and say, oh, this is our territory. Go bring war there. And it's just going to be infectious until we take care of our own selves here on Earth.
Yeah. And perhaps that's another reason why we're being watched, why we're being visited, because we're a threat. At the moment, we're only a very local threat to our own planet, but who knows how far away we are from some sort of groundbreaking sudden advancement, because that's the thing with technology. Nothing happens for centuries, then centuries can happen in days. We suddenly find something, discover something, and who knows how close we are to that. And suddenly we're posing a risk to, star systems bordering ours, which, could be a big problem for the people and civilizations that live there. I don't know. It's just, there's many reasons why we could be being watched. That's just one of them, but I think absolutely we are being watched.
Yeah. Real quick, I want to add, you guys were saying about aliens and maybe they're deceptive, or maybe they're hostile, or maybe, they look at us as a threat. But what if it is, as Dale is saying, if they're harvesting us, maybe they know the importance of the human software, to say it lightly, that a lot of things start with us. It was a hard thing to conjure a human being. And I've been following David Politis on Missing 411. And a lot of these disappearances happen to be very smart individuals. And if they are taking these individuals, I just don't find it that they would take them to eat them or kill them. Or I think they're either harvesting their internal. That internal could be the software, or it could be the soul. Or they could be taking the actual human light years away, putting them on different planets to help terraform and to start new colonies. And yeah, they don't carry the emotion of this person has a family, we're taking this person away, and it's going to cause this anger and confusion amongst this species. I don't think they look at things like that. And if it is a collective society of aliens, they typically would have harnessed their planet's power, their sun, their solar system. They're a type 3 species. They can send out drones wherever they want, collect all these things, bring them back, drop them off where they need to be dropped off. I mean, what if it's a whole orchestra of things that we, with our feeble mind, can look at? Okay, these are negative things we're being taken, but they're things that have been done for years, and they have to be done because they know how volatile the cosmos is.
Could be. Yeah. Could be. Like you described, like all the civilizations as like a collective. It could be that maybe one or two civilizations are like that, and we're being protected by other civilizations. There are some accounts of that in various books I've read. The Greys are hostile, and people from Pleiades are looking after us, and so on and so forth. You don't know what to believe. Everything could be a possibility.
Right.
That's the thing.
Right.
But if we were being harvested as people, like cattle, I think we'd be a lot more aware of it, because they wouldn't bother or care about hiding it from us, because they're so technologically superior to us.
Right.
wouldn't be a problem. We would literally be like cattle in farms, you know,
Right.
like the Time Machine, H.G. Wells, you know, the Elox and the I've forgotten what they're called now, but yeah, creatures come up out of the ground and harvest the people above ground, you know, and they don't try to hide it.
War of
They're
the
very overt
Worlds.
about it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
War of the Worlds.
Oh no, not War of the Worlds, the Time Machine. That one is H.G. Wells.
Oh, the Time
When
Machine.
he goes into the future,
Mhm.
Victorian guy builds a time machine, goes into the future, and there's the Elox and the I've forgotten what the bad ones are called.
Yeah, they had a
But
movie
yeah,
on it.
there's
Yep.
a film with Guy Pearce.
Yep. They
in it
made
as
a movie about
well
it.
worth
Yep.
watching.
Yep.
But yeah, the upshot is I don't think they wouldn't care about being covert, because they clearly are covert from your experiences, from many people's experiences. They kind of put it out there, but they kind of disappear pretty quickly as well, you know.
Right.
And if we were being harvested, they'd be all over us. You know, we'd see them every day, and people would be disappearing left, right, and center. It would be, it would be very, very overt, I think. So I think there could be malevolent races out there, but I think mostly they are benevolent, and we are under the protection of benevolent species. At
Right.
least I hope so.
Right.
What
And
do you-
I would think our government would know, though.
Right.
You know, like the incident that happened in Rendlesham Air Force Base, correct?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there was nothing negative that happened from that visitation, correct?
Yeah, correct. Correct. Well, even alien abductions, you know, you hear the Whitley Strieber and the Travis Walton stories, and you see the movies, especially Fire in the Sky with Travis Walton, and it looks horrific, but you read his actual account, and actually it wasn't really that horrific at all.
Right.
You know, these alien abductions, although they're scary, it's almost like taking your poor animal to the vets. Speak of the devil, little lady there.
Yeah.
And taking them to the vets, they're terrified, but it's for their own good.
Right.
And alien abductions seem, from most accounts, to be like that. It is scary, but it's a necessity rather than some sort of horror, torture, malevolent type thing. A lot of people get like these ESP messages that you're okay, you're safe, we don't mean
Right.
you any harm.
Right.
Although we're going to probe you in multiple orifices,
Well-
but you know, you'll recover just fine for it.
And they seem to have like a natural human local for that fear, because even from the encounters of Betty and Barney Hill when they were abducted, Betty clearly remembers the encounter, them talking to her, speaking with her. Her husband was in the same room or different room being treated and looked after, and they were telling her that she was okay, giving her some insight. And I think I want to say they had like minor radiation fallout from it or something like
burns,
that,
yeah.
or burns, but they came back from it. You know, they forgot how they got in there. They had certain time lapse issues, but it was a test. And she even said it wasn't something that was like menacing. It wasn't something that was like terrifying.
And I believe she was under hypnosis when they were recalling all of these events.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then the husband was just like, he didn't want to accept it at first until, you know, Betty just kept bringing it up.
Yeah.
Something happened. We were taken.
Yeah.
You know, so even those accounts were good accounts.
Yeah, definitely. One interesting thing that a trend that happens with people that see UFOs is they become a bit complacent when they see it. You know, some people are very, very intense about it, but the majority, when asked, "Oh, did you take a picture?" they go, "Oh no, I didn't think about that." There's almost like a sort of a relaxed nature and complacency that comes over people upon witnessing craft and things up close. And I don't know whether that's any sort of conscious projection or something upon people just to keep them calmer. You know, showing a benevolence rather than a malevolence. It is very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but think about it. So if you're caught up in the moment and something really has your attention, I doubt the first thing on my mind is going to be, let me grab my cell phone. I'm going to be in the moment, looking at what I'm looking at, because it has just ruined all my true beliefs of what this reality holds. And you'll stay in that as far as long as until you've had your fill, or you snap out of it and go, oh shit, let me get a picture.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know?
And we need to change that from ruin, because if we stick with the reality that we're sold by everyday life, it's pretty dim and dismal.
Right.
Whereas,
Right.
you know, if we're suddenly exposed to all the things we've been talking about, I wouldn't call that a ruination. I'd call it a salvation more
Right.
than anything. Like, oh wow, yeah, we're not alone in the universe. That's fantastic. And E.T. is going to show me that consciousness is unbounded and is the fabric of the universe. I think that would be great, but depends on the person you're speaking to. You know, I know
Right.
lots of people who are not comfortable at all with anything we are speaking about. You know, I had a very good friend of the family who passed away many years ago, and I discussed at length with him, you know, potential of life after death, and he'd be horrified by it. He would not be comforted by it at all. He was terrified by the idea. He had comfort from the fact that he thought when you died, you were gone and that was it, and that brought him comfort. I can't understand that. I can't ever get my head around that.
Right.
Maybe people like some sort of finality to things. Maybe he'd done a lot of terrible things in his life that he wasn't admitting to. I don't know. I don't know. But,
Yeah.
you know, we kind of, one thing I've learned, I mean, I'm 47 now, is to stop judging other people based on my own set of beliefs and morals, because we're all so different, you know.
Yeah.
We
Yep.
really are.
We truly
And
are.
that's what makes us beautiful.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. You don't want
And
the
dangerous.
same.
And
Right,
dangerous.
And dangerous. We got a few more questions and we're going to probably wrap it up. But let me ask you guys this. Do you think we'll see some sort of significant disclosure? I mean, really big disclosure in our lifetime?
I think we already have. I mean, how much more?
No, I mean, so let me restate that. Enough to have the masses of the world stop and pay attention.
Are you talking like alien craft landing on the White
I'm
House?
talking alien crafts. I'm talking they're hovering. We know they're there. They're beyond the government's control at this point. Do you think we'll see that in our lifetime?
Ooh. I'll have to do it on an odds thing.
I think we do. I mean, I think in 10 years from now, a lot will be disclosed, because you're going to have private industries. You already have billionaires going out into space. And if you just get people like us into the limelight in which the elite are in now, the information is going to leak faster, and the proof is just going to be inevitable. You can't hide a lie.
You think it'll build momentum then as it goes?
It's just going to steamroll, and it's going to get to the point where it's not even going to affect us. I think most people will still go about their lives unless there is physical actions happening, like Star Wars, and we see a Death Star show up, and there's laser fights going. You know,
Yeah, right.
So I mean, I think it'll happen within 10 years.
I was going to say 10 years as well. But one thing I've come to realize, obviously, I read that book Above Top Secret back in the late 80s, early 90s. And I thought within 5 years then it'd all be out. Oh, yeah, you know, this year they'll be selling us it on the media. Next year it'll be on the news. The year after that, it'll be proven. But things are happening at so much slower rate than I ever expected. You know, that's 30, 35, nearly 40 years ago. So I think we'd like it to be within 10 years. I'd like it to be within 10 years. But I think we're going to be surprised by how much slower it will be. I could be wrong. I hope I am wrong. I hope, like you say, it builds momentum to the point where people go, hey, you know, we've had enough. And if you watch like News Network, News 7 Australia, they've got some great documentaries on it. And, you know, if you watch those, it really will sell you the idea that, yeah, we're on the precipice right now of finding out the truth.
Yeah, Russ Coulthart is
Russ Coulthart. Yeah. But if you go on the internet and you search for it, you find it.
Right.
But if I didn't go looking for it, it's not on my TV here. Nothing like that, you know. And what we have to measure against is what we're being shown on the television and the newspapers every day. And I'm not talking like the tabloids, which contain all sorts of really crazy things.
Right.
but you know, mainstream media that we're being sold, I see very little on it here. Granted, I don't watch that much television these days, but even, you know, my father's glued to the news, and he says, you know, there's not that much, which means it is happening at a slower rate. You know,
Right.
Yeah.
truth is out there, but you have to go look for it at the moment. It's not being pushed into our faces as much as we'd like to think. Obviously, you chaps say it's different over there.
Yeah, in 2017, it really started to take a foothold and start to blow up when the Tic Tac and the Nimitz and the gimbal videos started to show up. It really started going. The ball started rolling downhill.
And I think Tucker Carlson, which is he's on Fox News. He's a journalist. And,
he covers it a lot.
He covers it more than most people I've seen in live or, you know, national media cover the situation. But I guess you would have to go on YouTube and you know, the interwebs and look at podcasts and look at these you know, scientists and you know, thought-provoking conversations with people ahead of us are having. And, you know, I just find it hard to believe it's not going on, you know, but we just don't have any proof. Have you and your father ever seen anything physically?
Oh yeah, my dad, this is what really got me into all of this. So had a few experiences my dad has. I've never seen anything physically myself, but my father in the 1970s woke up one morning, looked out the house window, and he was living with his parents, married to my mother at the time. They'd only just got married. Looked out the house window, saw a silver ball in the sky, and it was kind of vibrating like that. And he called everybody out. Everybody was watching it, and my mum said, "Whoa, look, there's another one." And another one came over, and it was another silver ball, but it had like a black ball at the front of it, and the two joined. And then have you seen those videos where you have an object come in? There's loads of plumes of something coming out the back when they look on the infrared. He said it was just like that going across the sky, just plumes and plumes of stuff, and it just slowly went away. About a year or so later, they'd bought like a trailer, like a static caravan to live in on the farms. They didn't have to live in the farmhouse with my dad's parents whilst they were building their own little place, and they had a skylight there. And I remember when I was growing up, the skylight was always painted over. And I always wondered why. And it's only when I was much older, my dad told me, oh, one night we were lying in bed and my mum suddenly elbows him and goes, look at that. And there was a silvery white light going in circles right above this trailer, this static caravan. And they're both looking at it, and all of a sudden it just zigzagged off across the sky like that in a zigzag formation. So, you know, describe and explain those two things.
Right.
So,
Wow.
you know, since then, my father's always been convinced. He's seen a few other things, but nothing as momentous as that.
Right.
But my personal one was I was having a dream, and this is when I was younger. We were still in the static caravan, and it was the middle of winter, and I was lying in bed, and I had a window behind my bed, and it was hinged at the top. And in this dream, bright light came through the curtains. The curtains flung back, the window hinged up, opened, arms grabbed me, pulled me out. Next thing I know, I'm in this room, and it looks like it's made of concrete. You know, multi-story car parks, you have the ramps going up and down. It was a little bit like that. There's no cars, there's no tarmac, there's no pay for your parking machines or anything like that. But it sort of looked like that with these angular concrete structures everywhere. And I was on the floor, and I was sat completely naked, and the floor was wet. And I suddenly come to my senses. I'm like, what am I doing here? I couldn't remember anything. And obviously this is in a dream. And I look over, and there's a guy sat opposite me, and he's sat there, and his eyes are just wide. He's unblinking, and he's just staring like that, just not moving, legs crossed on the floor. And I go over to him and start shaking him. I'm like, hey, mate, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. And he's just completely zonked out. And then I suddenly remember being pulled out of my bed by these arms pulling me out of the bed. And it's bright light through my window. And I start screaming and screaming. Next thing, atypical, I do sit up in bed screaming like, oh. And I wake up, I'm like, oh, thank God for that. It was just a dream. And then I felt a breeze on the back of my neck. I turned around, and my window was wide open.
Oh,
Makes my hair stand on end to this day. My
man,
window
you
was
got
wide
my
open
what?
in the middle of winter, and the curtains were open by about this much. I turned around, I got up, and I sat in the living room. We live on a farm with farmers. My dad had a shotgun. I got it at the sort of shotgun safe, and I just sat there for hours, absolutely terrified. My father got up in the morning. He's like, "What the hell are you doing?" And I'm sat there, sort of pale and terrified, arm to the teeth.
Yeah.
Could have been a dream. I could have opened that window in my sleep. Got a bit hot. I'd never done that before.
Right.
But,
And you haven't done it since, have you?
No.
I would chalk that one up on the almost abducted list there, my good sir.
Yeah.
That's scary. It was real scary.
Yeah.
Real scary.
Yeah. I mean, that's
very interesting.
Yeah. That's like when I had the ear ringing events, Some people say, "Oh, it's aliens talking to you," or "Oh, it's a spiritual thing," and I don't know what it is, and I'm not afraid, like most scientists and most people, to say I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what this is. Has it challenged my thought process? Absolutely. Do I think it's something dimensional, spiritual? I don't know. But what I do know is it's a symptom of
our reality.
Our reality, and I'm just happy to go along with it. And as long as it doesn't cause me harm, I kind of made my peace with it, So one question for me before we go. What does this world look like if we all found out tomorrow? And I would like to know what you would do if there's an afterlife and there is, I won't say a heaven and a hell, but there is an afterlife.
We found out about.
Yeah.
Sorry, it just broke up then. Okay.
Are you good? Can you?
I'm really sorry. The internet connection has just gone unstable. I've just got a notice come up. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hello? Yeah, you got me back. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Go on.
Okay. So, what happens to your thought process? What do you do? Do you stay on this planet once they said, "Hey, look, there's an afterlife. It's much better than this, according to our data, but you have to stay here to learn certain things." Do you stay? Do you talk to your family about it? What do you do?
There's a couple of things that come into that. As I've listened to the near-death experiences, and the people who commit suicide always get sent back to do it again. That's a whole other conversation for another podcast, no doubt. So you'd have to bear that in mind, that it's you can't. There's no cheating this system. You'll just be sent back to start again. The other thing is, it depends on the day what I do, and I'm going to draw off really, really recent experience. As you chaps know, I was rushed into hospital 4 weeks ago with kidney stones, and a kidney stone blocked my ureter, caused my kidney to swell up, and it was starting to shut down. And so I can sit here right now and say, oh, if it was disclosed right now, I'd be like, yeah, I'd carry on living. I'd do the task I've been sent here to do. But life is a very fluid thing. It changes all the time. And I remember lying in the A&E department of the local hospital, clinging onto the bed in the most incredible pain I've ever been in. And I had a ruptured appendix back in 2017. And that was a walk in the park compared to this. I could not escape the pain. And I remember lying there and wishing for an out-of-body experience. Apply the knowledge of the afterlife, proof, absolute irrefutable proof of the afterlife to me in that situation. I can't say what I'd have done, but I'd be worried that I might take that step to get out of that pain, instead of enduring it, which is why I think we're not meant to know, because how many of us would cheat the system? We really would. I think many of us would, more than we'd care to admit. Because
Right.
when shit gets bad, it's really horrible.
So
This world is such an amazing, brilliant, wonderful world, but it can be so dark and horrible as well.
So you're really saying it's the situation that will cause you to drive your decision.
Yeah, as I think it would with everyone.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there are certain people in the world that live in certain kind of situational states than others. I'd like to think the three of us, and hopefully many people listening, are in a higher situational state, higher awareness, more kindness, more morality. And there are people out there who are definitely not like that. So take, for example, it was on the news tomorrow, life after death has been proven. This isn't the true reality. This is an emergent reality, and there's a greater reality beyond this. Think of all the crazy kids that play computer games, or the crazy psychopaths that like to hurt people, who go around shooting and killing people because, they're not really killing them. They're just sending them to heaven. So they aren't really doing a bad thing. You've got that to contend with as well.
Right. Yeah, that's something I did not think about. I mean, there's so many different variables that we can't think about when it comes to disclosure to the afterlife, or disclosure to aliens visiting, or Bigfoot, in secluded areas. And I think those are the things that keep our government up at night, the things we can't think about.
Right.
It's the consequences,
Yes.
It's the consequence, and the fact that disclosure of the afterlife would remove consequences for a lot of people. They'd feel like they don't have consequences anymore.
Right.
The tales we get from NDE'S, 99% are incredibly positive. The only negative ones, even the people that have had negative ones, go on to say that actually, although negative at the time, it's had a positive effect on their life. It's like a medicine they've been given, a medicine they need. And so, who wouldn't want that?
Right.
And if you're having a hard day, you have an argument with someone you don't like, well, I'll just kill them because I'll only be sending them to this wonderful place, and then I'll just kill myself because I'll go there as well.
Yeah.
And this already happens in this world,
Which kind of makes,
talk about the events this week have just been awful,
right.
Yeah.
Which kind of
It's
makes
just-
Earth or the physical life obsolete, if that's the case. If we're not going to see it out, and
completely.
everybody's just jumping ship, then it makes the whole living experience obsolete. Then that means
and plenty of people do that already in the world we already live in.
Right.
They jump ship, or they take other people out,
Right.
and that needs to be kept to a minimum if what we believe is true.
And we chalk it
true.
and we chalk it up as bad things because we're of that nature of mind. But again, we don't know how it's played. We don't know if these are lessons for people to learn, lessons for us all to learn. We look at them as horrible things that we wouldn't do, or we don't like it. But at the end of the day, what if they're lessons for people? What if all these bad outcomes we speak of are just lessons? It's just the nature of the beast. We signed up for it. This is what it is. You got to see it out.
Well, interesting you should say that. I always quote the example of Coventry in World War II and the bombing of Coventry. I'm only about 15 miles from Coventry now. And when Coventry was bombed by the Luftwaffe, my grandfather on a farm just outside Worcester could read a newspaper at the top of our field, which is on a bit of a hill because of the burning fires of Coventry. Was that bad. But the British government knew that was coming. They knew it was going to happen. And they could take no action to prevent it or evacuate the population. Because if they did that, the Nazis would have known that we'd cracked the Enigma code. And they could not let them know that we'd cracked that code.
Wow.
Otherwise, it would have undone so much down the future. So it was that sacrifice then of Coventry that kept it a secret that we'd cracked the Enigma code, if I've got all the facts right on this. I have to double check myself later. But yeah, so Coventry was thrown under the bus. It was sacrificed to keep that information from getting out, that we knew what the Nazis were saying because we knew it was coming. And who knows, a lot of the bad things we see in this world could be part and parcel of a greater picture. It seems awful to say that. Seems awful to say that, because from the face of it, these things are just beyond understanding.
They are.
And they really are. And I think we need to keep that fresh in our minds because a lot of things I think we get. I think it's a big mix-up. I think there are bad things that happen in the world that are part of the course and the path of civilization that need to happen to prevent a worse thing going on further down the line. But I think also we have free will. I don't dispute that for a second. That is the gift we're given, and the darkness we feel in this world and we experience is part and parcel of the the side effects of that. It's the side effects of the gift of free will. People say, if there's God, why doesn't God intervene? Well, the moment God would intervene and stop something like a disaster or something like that, then that would be full disclosure. That would be a full revelation. And then we're back to that other situation where, oh, there's an afterlife. Oh, well, I don't want to be here anyway. Bang, shoot myself. Oh, I don't want you to be here. Bang. So, people who say, if there was a God, they would have stopped this terrible disaster and all these thousands of people dying. Well, I think if they would have done that, the repercussions would have meant millions millions on the planet dying, people just taking themselves out because the truth of all reality would have been disclosed.
Right. I mean, I've done a lot of bad things, and I've had a lot of bad things happen to me. And I think it took those to create the person you see in front of you today.
Right.
So maybe these things are a must.
And then with those bad things, is there anything you want to say to those watching right now to leave it off on a more positive note? Is there any insight you can give someone
To continue on, push the good fight.
How incredible existence is, be grateful for everything. I watched a near-death experience account yesterday, and the chap said, just being thankful brings you closer to our creator God, to, if you wish to call it that, or whatever you determine to call it, some sort of creationary force, just to being thankful and stop taking things for granted. As I say, if you're falling into the mire and darkness of this physical world, stop taking things for granted and just stop and think for a minute what's going on. As the Greek philosopher said, there should be nothing, so why is there something? And the moment you start really thinking about what's going on, I think it can change your paradigms can change, and you can start understanding that there's far more to this than at face value. This little placemat coaster thing here, it's just a placemat. I take it for granted every day, but isn't that incredible?
Right.
Isn't that incredible? This shouldn't exist. I shouldn't exist, but here it is.
Yeah.
A physical thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it an illusion? Is it real? I think it's real, but something has created the universe. And if you stop taking things for granted and look around you for a minute and really appreciate what's going on, this place is absolutely incredible, because nothing should exist.
Right.
Everything exists.
Real quick, can you share the story with your cats, Loki and what's the other one? Freya. Yeah. Can you share that story real quick? Because there's a lot of cat lovers out there. And man, that story, I only heard a bit or bits and pieces of it, but can you share
Are we
that?
talking about the cataclysmic dysentery?
Yes.
Yeah. Armageddon.
Shit all over the place.
It's terrible. Our house, I swear the smell still hasn't gone. Oh. So yeah, we pick up these two Siberian kittens, and they're lovely. I'll show you them now. They're just having a little snooze there together. And
Awesome.
we pick them up from, reputable breeder. Everything's fine. We bring them home. We have them here for a week. And then the dysentery and vomiting just starts. And it goes on for 2.5 to 3 weeks. And, we're in and out of the vets. We spend hundreds of pounds at the vets. We have pet insurance, but they don't cover us for the first 2 weeks. So we had to pay for all that ourselves. Ultimately, the vet never got to the bottom of it. But my Lord, it was terrible. It really was terrible. We thought we were going to lose them. So when we got Loki, he was 800 grams and he dropped to 475 grams. He was just skin on bone, And I thought to myself at the time, basically a fifth of their lives shitting themselves to death. That's what they spent. And it's amazing they got through it. And you know what? They used the litter tray every single time, except once when they're on antibiotics and Loki couldn't control himself and pretty much destroyed the city I'm currently sat on. So we've had to do a lot of cleaning in that respect. But yeah, they pulled through. They pulled through, and we're really thankful for that. And the funny thing is, I didn't say this earlier when I was talking to Lamar about it, but we started praying, and I got my wife to pray. And my wife isn't religious, she likes to distance herself a lot from this sort of stuff. She has had some experiences. When she was younger, she heard a radio playing in her cupboard, and she pulled out the radio. She's like, "Why is this radio on?" But it wasn't. The button, the knob was switched off. She's like, "I'll take the batteries out." She turned it over. There was no batteries in it, and at that moment, it stopped.
Oh wow!
That's puzzled her to this day.
Wow!
Even in this house, we have strange goings on, but that's for another time.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we started praying for those cats, and it was that point that they started to heal and to get better,
Right. Power of prayer.
And those cats had and that's the beautiful thing about the story. The cats don't know a lot about a lot, and they depend on something higher than them.
Yeah.
To help.
Yeah.
Right.
And that story was just like, it hit on so many cylinders.
Yeah. Completely. There's a chap saying about cats. I've gone on a tangent now. I know you guys want to end this, but Tom Campbell, My Big Toe, My Big Theory of Everything, TOE. He says in there that creatures and life forms on this planet that we would deem lesser than us, less intelligent, are actually more aware of this greater realm than we are, because they can handle it. They're not going to react. They're not going to freak out. They haven't got guns and missiles and knives and hostility towards each other. So, things like trees, he meditates a lot, and he claims he's had conversations with trees in meditation. And he said to the tree, why are you a tree? You're just stuck there forever, what seems like forever, hundreds of years in one place. And the tree says back to him, but I'm aware of the true nature of reality. Why would you choose to be a human? Yeah, you can move around, but you're in darkness your whole life.
Oh, wow.
You've got the blinkers on, and that's really profound. And so I think animals are more aware of these things. These cats constantly turn and look up my stairs here to the right. What's the right of me, left of you, and sometimes freak out and run off like something is coming down the stairs.
Right.
And the previous resident who lived here, his daughter lived in the room that's directly above us, and she was never comfortable, always had nightmares. They moved into a new house, hasn't had a nightmare since.
Right.
Oh,
Wow.
we have to investigate this.
Yeah, we'll have to hit that on our next meeting, sir.
Yeah. I just think that was a phenomenal story. It's going to take all of us to help all of us.
Yeah, seriously.
It can't be left to an industry, a company, or one person. Like, if we're all going to get through this, it's going to take all of us.
Yep.
Yeah, completely. And it raises the vibration of the world.
Right.
I recently lost a very close friend who was a psychic medium, and very, very sad for her passing. But she had no fear of death. She was scared of the dying process, but she had no fear of death itself, because she knew what was coming after. But she always educated me that everything is a vibration, and science is on board with that as well, even quantum vibrations, so on and so forth. And it's all different frequencies. And I'm not sure I can buy into this sort of stuff, because I have I've spoken very positively tonight, but I have a very dark, skeptical side that kicks in and does drag me to a place of darkness. And if I overindulge myself in this kind of stuff, eventually I'll start getting skeptical and then go into a place of darkness, which is why every so often I have to back off from it.
Right.
I spoke to you, Lamar, in the past about this.
Yep.
And part of me thinks I'm getting a kick, because what happens is I get so into this, I'm almost at that point where I've been given personal full disclosure, and I start to lose a grip on this reality.
Right.
And then that undoes the purpose of this reality. That makes this reality a waste.
Right.
I start wandering around all day with my head in the clouds, not caring if I live or die, because there's a greater reality. But that's wrong. That's not what we're here for.
Right. Exactly. I always say that an NDE is a curse and a blessing, because sometimes I go, oh, all this shit I'm going through right now is just temporary. Why am I getting so emotionally involved? And it's just temporary. My mood, my job, what I eat, where I go, what I think, it's all temporary. And it could be taken within the blink of an eye. 2 minutes after this, I could, not exist physically. So everything I was holding on to, that temporary stuff, really meant nothing. But you're right. So if we don't spend more time into this life thinking about our actual life and presence here and in the moment, what would it all have been for? You just, again, you're not grateful. You're not taking.
One thing I'm guilty of is I've lost some people very close to me. And, I've only really got one, it's just a handful of family members left and that. But one thing I've done is after I've had those losses, is I've dug around for evidence and information, trying to get the proof that they still are around, that they still exist. And that can be comforting, but it stops you letting go. It stops you letting go so much. And it can be dangerous, I think, because then you hang on to things that we're not meant to hang on to here. We are meant to let go. It is temporary, but we are meant to let go on a temporary basis. It may seem a long time for us, but it's a blink in the eye of creation.
Yeah, it is.
And, it stops us from fulfilling what we're meant to fulfill here,
Right.
And I said to the friend last night, he's recently lost his partner, and I said to him, that exact thing, you shouldn't dig around for this sort of stuff. And one thing I've learned, there's a guy on the internet called Natural Gallant Bodybuilding, Jason, I've forgotten his surname now, Jason Gallant, of course. My brain has had it, I tell you. And I was grieving at one point, and I've chatted with him online, and he put up a video, and I don't know whether it's for me or not. It may well have been, but it was a really great video. And he said, one of the things we do with grief is we run a narrative with it. We always have a story. So when you're feeling sad, you start thinking about the things you've lost, the things you could have done differently. You start thinking about the passing of someone, and how you miss them every day. And he said that's when grief becomes a nasty cycle. He said, what you want to do is just let that grief flow into you. Open yourself to the sadness and drop the narrative. Don't have any story. Let the story go and let the sadness flow through you. And I started doing that. And I don't know if it'll be the same for everybody, but it's weird. That sadness almost became healing and almost became beautiful, you know? And it was very, very strange. And the grief cycle suddenly stopped, and I healed a lot quicker when I dropped that narrative and when I stopped looking for proof that my deceased loved ones had carried on, because I have to get on with this life, because this life, as we've already said, is beautiful and amazing as much as it is dark, and we've got to raise the vibration of this world to make it more beautiful. And I think that's the most important thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And with that said, Dale, man, you've been a great interview, and we're going to have you back. We're going to continue this conversation.
We definitely got to get back into this house, man. I want to know what's going on in your house.
But for that, if you guys like the podcast, like the channel.
Oh, wait. Subscribe.
There you go. And ring the bell. Also, the Patreon is up. You can help the channel. Come along by a small donation, as little as 75 cents on a dollar, as this one would say.
Yeah, I don't know why I still say it, but now you're starting to say it.
Makes no damn sense.
Yeah. We will be taking a little bit of a break from the podcasting coming soon. We have a lot of rehearsals to get out of the way here. Our live set, the music portion of the business is coming to head. So we have a huge show in July. It's a 2-day event, listener party. We're working out the details. If you're here in the States, we'll put tickets on sale, but there will only be about 65 tickets due to the event or the venue size. And a lot of people who really are curious into what we're playing decided to invite themselves.
Right.
So they have like these super tickets that we weren't able to get.
Right.
Which is
I
funny.
don't even know who.
Which is funny to me because we're the ones doing the damn
show.
music. It's just it's crazy.
Figure.
So if you don't see us, that is why we've been taking a lot of time to get this live act together. We're also going to be uploading some more music. So stand by for that. I can't give any dates, but we are working on uploading some shortly here.
Yeah, with that said, peace.
Peace out.
Peace, y'all. Peace.
Peace.